The Consensus Wars by John Kitchen. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. This is a work of cyber fiction that was created in an iterative process using multimodal large language models. Any resemblance to any person, place, or institution, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. Elena's hands were shaking as she read the Washington Post headline on her phone. Scientists accused of mind control operations in rural communities. The article, based on leaked emails from a disgruntled former CERG researcher, painted their work as a sophisticated psychological manipulation campaign targeting vulnerable populations. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same techniques they'd used to study information propagation were now being used against them. Someone had weaponized their own methodology to destroy their credibility. "It gets worse," Sarah said, sliding a tablet across the conference table. The screen showed congressional subpoena documents demanding all CERG research materials, internal communications, and financial records. Representative Robert Hayes of Texas was calling for criminal investigations into what he termed federally funded psychological warfare against American citizens. Elena skimmed the legal documents, recognizing the sophisticated media strategy at work. Hayes wasn't just attacking CERG, he was using their story to discredit climate science more broadly. The narrative was elegant and devastating. Climate scientists had become so desperate to force compliance that they'd resorted to mass psychological manipulation. "How bad is the damage?" she asked. Alex pulled up media monitoring displays showing the story's propagation across social networks. The visualization looked disturbingly familiar. It was spreading through the same pathways they'd mapped for misinformation, amplified by the same trusted local voices they'd identified as key influence nodes. 47 million impressions in the first 6 hours, Alex reported. The anti-vaccine networks we studied in Oregon are now sharing stories about how government scientists secretly experimented on their community. They're using Dr. Martinez as evidence that even local doctors can't be trusted. Elena felt sick. Their most successful intervention was being inverted into proof of exactly the kind of institutional deception that had fueled science denial in the first place. They'd inadvertently provided conspiracy theorists with a real conspiracy. "There's more," Maya said grimly. 3 of our partner communities have formally requested that we cease all research activities. The Millfield School Board passed a resolution banning psychological research operations on students and families. Elena stared at the wall of monitors, watching their careful work unravel in real time. Parents who had vaccinated their children because of CIRG's intervention were now questioning those decisions. Trust they'd worked months to build was evaporating overnight. Her phone rang. Dr. Thompson's name appeared on the screen. "I warned you," Thompson said without preamble when Elena answered. "I warned you that this would happen. Margaret, I know this looks bad. It looks exactly like what it is, Elena. You abandoned scientific ethics, and now you're paying the price. But the real tragedy is that you're taking the rest of us down with you." Elena stepped away from the team, moving toward the warehouse's back exit. "What do you mean?" "I mean that Hayes is using your work to justify cutting climate research funding across all federal agencies. He's arguing that climate scientists can't be trusted with public money because you've proven we're willing to manipulate public opinion through deception." The implication hit Elena like a physical blow. Their attempt to save climate science from political attack had instead provided ammunition for the biggest assault on climate research in decades. How many programs? Elena asked. 17 research initiatives at NOAA, 12 at NSF, 6 at EPA, nearly 300 million in funding, 15 years of research infrastructure that took decades to build. Elena closed her eyes, calculating the consequences. Climate modeling programs, atmospheric monitoring systems, adaptation research, all of it vulnerable, because CERG had proven that climate scientists were willing to cross ethical boundaries when they felt sufficiently threatened. There has to be something we can do, Elena said. There is, Thompson replied. You can shut down this operation, destroy all your research materials, and spend the next 5 years rebuilding the trust you've destroyed, starting with a very public apology for betraying everything science stands for. Elena ended the call and walked back inside, where her team was huddled around Alex's monitors, tracking the story's continued propagation. The warehouse that had once hummed with excitement now felt like a bunker under siege. Options? She asked. We could release all our research materials publicly, Sarah suggested. Full transparency about methods, results, ethical considerations show that we were trying to help communities make better health decisions, not manipulate them for political purposes. Won't work, Alex said, pulling up modeling predictions. Transparency narratives don't propagate as effectively as betrayal narratives. The more we try to explain ourselves, the more guilty we look. What about doubling down? Maya asked. We could argue that sophisticated misinformation campaigns justify sophisticated countermeasures. Frame this as a necessary response to existing manipulation. That makes us sound like we're admitting to psychological warfare, Lisa pointed out. It confirms every conspiracy theory about government mind control. Elena studied the monitors, recognizing the impossible situation they'd created for themselves. Every response option led to further degradation of trust in scientific institutions. They designed a perfect trap and walked straight into it. There's another option, Alex said quietly. The room fell silent. We could prove that our techniques work by using them to counter this attack. Deploy the same network analysis that's being used against us. Identify key influence nodes in the communities that are spreading these stories. Provide those nodes with counter-narratives that reframe our work as legitimate public health research. Elena stared at him. You're suggesting we launch a psychological operation to defend ourselves against accusations that we launched psychological operations? I'm suggesting we use our tools to save our tools, Alex replied. The alternative is watching everything we've built get destroyed by people using inferior versions of our own methods. Sarah was shaking her head. That's exactly what they're accusing us of. Using scientific research as cover for propaganda campaigns. But it would work, Alex insisted. 6 months from now, this story could be remembered as a misunderstanding rather than a scandal. We have the technical capability to reshape public perception of our own work. Elena felt vertigo, as if she were standing at the edge of an ethical cliff. They'd started by studying how to make scientific information more persuasive. Now they were contemplating using those same techniques to manufacture consent for their own existence. What's the difference between what we'd be doing and what they're already doing to us? She asked. We'd be serving truth instead of falsehood, Maya said. Would we? Elena asked. Or would we be serving our own institutional interests and calling it truth? The question hung in the air like smoke. Elena realized they'd reached the moment she'd been dreading since the project began. The point where the tools they developed to serve science could just as easily serve themselves. Her laptop chimed with an email from the University of California administration. The subject line read, "Administrative leave pending investigation." Elena opened the message, scanning quickly through the bureaucratic language that boiled down to a simple message. She was suspended from her faculty position while the university conducted its own investigation into SERG's activities. Similar emails were arriving for Sarah, Maya, and the other academics on the team. Well, Elena said, closing the laptop. That makes the decision easier. What do you mean? Sarah asked. Elena looked around the warehouse, at the wall of monitors tracking global information flows, at the whiteboards covered with network diagrams and psychological models, at the team of brilliant researchers who'd sacrificed traditional academic careers to build something unprecedented. I mean, we're out of the ivory tower whether we want to be or not. The question is what we do next. Alex pulled up a new visualization showing the propagation patterns of the scandal coverage. The attacks are coordinated, he said. This isn't organic outrage. It's a systematic campaign using our own mapping of social influence networks. Someone studied our research and used it to destroy us. Elena moved closer to the screen, recognizing the mathematical signatures they'd identified in previous misinformation campaigns. Can you trace it back to the source? Working on it, Alex said, fingers flying across his keyboard. But whoever did this is sophisticated. They're using proxy networks, artificial amplification, coordinated inauthentic behavior, professional-grade information warfare. So, what do we do? Maya asked. Fight back? Surrender? Disappear? Elena stared at the data streams flowing across the monitors, each one representing thousands of minds processing information about their work. Some of those minds were forming opinions that would determine whether science-based policy remained possible in democratic societies. Others were being systematically manipulated by actors who understood network effects better than most academics understood their own research. We evolve, Elena said finally. Meaning what? Meaning we stop pretending this is still an academic research project. We're in an information war whether we admit it or not. The question is whether we're going to fight it with ethics review boards and peer review timelines, or whether we're going to fight it like a war. Sarah looked uncomfortable. Elena, if we abandon academic ethics entirely, have academic ethics prevented misinformation campaigns from reshaping public opinion on vaccines, climate change, evolution, basic epidemiology? Elena asked. We've been fighting with one hand tied behind our backs, while our opponents use every available weapon. She moved to the main whiteboard and began sketching a new organizational chart. SERG was an academic research project. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving public understanding of science? What if it was a consulting firm that helped communities make better informed decisions? What are you proposing? Lisa asked. I'm proposing we stop being researchers and start being practitioners. We take everything we've learned about belief networks and social influence, and we use it to build sustainable demand for scientific thinking in democratic societies. Elena wrote Consensus Foundation at the top of the whiteboard. No more IRB approvals. No more academic publishing. No more pretending that rigorous methods are sufficient if they don't produce results. Alex was nodding slowly. A scientific advocacy organization with the technical sophistication to compete with professional misinformation campaigns. Exactly. We study belief networks not to publish papers about them, but to influence them more effectively than our opponents. That's not science anymore, Sarah said quietly. No, Elena agreed. It's applied science. The same way that medicine applies biological research to heal people, or engineering applies physics research to build bridges. We'd be applying social science research to build healthier information ecosystems. The warehouse fell quiet except for the hum of computers processing data about belief propagation through networks that most people didn't know existed. Outside, Oakland continued its daily routines, unaware that the future of scientific credibility was being decided in a converted warehouse by a team of researchers who discovered that truth wasn't enough. Elena looked at her colleagues, brilliant scientists who'd sacrificed academic careers to wrestle with the most important question of their time: how to preserve the possibility of evidence-based decision-making in societies increasingly dominated by weaponized information. I need to know who's in, she said, because what I'm proposing means we can never go back to traditional academia. We'll be advocates, consultants, operatives, whatever we need to be to win this war. But we won't be pure researchers anymore. One by one, hands went up around the room. They'd entered the warehouse as scientists studying belief change. They were leaving as engineers of belief change itself. The consensus wars had claimed their innocence, but not their mission. If anything, the mission had finally become clear.